Hello there everybody, Inky Fingers here, and this is Inky Fingers Architectural Art. Now recently I had a little inquiry about how I break down a building to draw it. A building like this, something a bit more detailed, something that looks a little bit more complicated, which I suppose this building we're going to paint today is a little bit more complicated looking, or is it? So I'm going to, in this video, draw and paint this building, but first off I want to show you how I look at this building and break it down into more manageable chunks, because it does look a little bit complicated, but it's not that complicated if you look at it the right way. So what you need to do when you get a build, if you're going to do a building like this, is you've got to break it down into smaller sections, break it down into shapes. In my mind, this is just blocks. It's just shapes, various shapes stitched together. So how I look at this, first off, I have a reference grid. It's a crosshair basically, so it divides it into sections. I always have this simply because I use this central point here as a reference point for measuring. So you can measure from there to there, get this side of the building, from there to there, from there to there, from there to there, from there to this part of the window frame. Everything comes from a central point, so you know it's good. All the measurements are going to be correct, because the one thing you need to do if you do an architectural piece is to get the measurements right, to get the orientation right, that type of thing. So when I look at this, I see it's a rectangle. We have the base of the building, and we have the height of the building. Like so. But what we need to do first is to, before we put any sort of blocks in, is we just need to get the measurements correct. So all we need to do there to find out how wide is the building, the width, how much it goes into the height, and then we can make our measurements. So for example, in this case, I'll just use my fingers. Say roughly the base is that. We turn it round and we go 1, 2. So it's basically, this building is basically twice in height for the width. So when you know that, when you come to draw it, you can just do a line at the bottom for the width, then measure it and go 1, 2, and draw a line at the top, and then see what it's like on your paper. If it's too small on your paper, then you know you need to make it larger. So in that case, you just make the line at the bottom a little bit longer I should say. So we say we make it up to there instead, then measure it, put it that way, 1, 2, and then you make that your new point. And when you fill the paper with the size that you like, then you can draw everything else in. But that's the most important stage to begin with. So say we've done that. So what we need to do is then look at it as in blocks. So as I said, this is just, to me, it's just a big rectangle generally. So we have that there. We have our height there. I'll do it to here. I'll tell you why in a second. So if you just put a line across there, I put a line going up. This pen's running out a little bit. Never mind. We're not interested in this part of the building or this part of the building, because that is different buildings. We're just interested in this one. So that's as you can see, that is a rectangle going from this sort of point there to there. And then on top of that, what we've got, well, we simply have a triangle, like so. That's a basic building. It's a rectangle with a triangle on the top. So that's all you would draw. So if you have a little plain page in a book, we've got a crosshair for a reference where we would just do a, so all we do is have that, say we've measured it, that goes up to about there, that goes to about there, we close that off, and then yeah, something like that. So that's what we would have. It's just very basically a kiddie's style house. But that's all you would need. So we have our basically rectangle with our triangle on the top. So now we need to look all this other complicated looking details within this rectangle. Well, how complicated is it? Well, for a start, with this particular building, we've got this part here, this feature here, and we've got another bit there, and we've got another little bit there. So all we would really do is for this part, we would draw a line across, obviously measuring, doing our measurements and working out how high this is to the length, which this is, if we do that, it's just about maybe it's just a little bit over halfway of the length of this, the base of it. So once you've got that, you work it out, then you just put a line going across there. So on this we would have, say, you just put a line like so. Then we have this line here, this feature. Forget about this part that goes, the little arch, that comes later. Again, we would just work out, there's our width. Oh, there you go. In this case, the height of this looks like is pretty much exactly, or very, very close to it, 99% of the length of the base. So with this, you would just do that, and you just put a line. So you would have something like that. Very basic. And then you have this part here, this thick part, and you do the same. Do a measurement, 1, 2, whatever, you get it up, and then that you would, it's not exactly in scale in this because I've just drawn a box, but so that's what you would have. You'd have a box, a rectangle with that triangle on, and you'd have this bisected here, bisected there, bisected there. So now what do we have? We have a rectangle with basically 1, 2, 3, 4 smaller rectangles within that box. We've got the big box, and we're sort of making the resolution smaller and smaller as we're going, progressing on with the drawing. So what else do we have? Well, if we go back to this bottom rectangle, we'll put that like that. This bottom rectangle, which is this part here, what do we have? Well, we have this part of the building, these columns there. Now if we do that, then what is this? What is it? Well, it's just basically two long vertical rectangles. So we could just, there's one rectangle, there's another vertical rectangle, and then we've got this part here, this bit that goes along there. Now again, you could measure it, or as because we're getting smaller and smaller in resolution, you could maybe now sort of judge by eye of whether that, I say that's about there, you say okay, so we put that there, so that is this bit there. So we have that. So that again, that's just a rectangle within this rectangle. And then what do we have now? we have, well, the rest of it is just this part here where the window is. Again, it's just another rectangle, but we've got a rectangle of these top windows. That's all it is. They're not windows, it's just a basic shape. So we have a basic shape, that's going to be these windows here. And then what have we got? Well, we've got a doorway here, there. What is that? Again, it's just a rectangle, a thin rectangle. Now, a good thing about having a red cross or this grid system is that, especially on this one, is that you can see that if this bisects the building exactly from the point of the eaves there all the way down, it goes directly through the middle of the door. So we could work it out and measure it and say, there we go, there is just, that's just the rectangle for the door. And then the windows, where we've just got one square and another square. And there we go, we have one square and another square. So if you take your time and you use the measurements to sort of measure it all out when you do these things, then unlike this, then you just have you'll have a nice accurately proportioned basically very basic blocks, and then you can later on you can start to put details in. But then we go into the second, this one part. So what do we have here? Well, we've got windows. So what's this window? Again, if you look at it, a window there is just another rectangle, as is that. Now, the end of this rectangle, one side of it, just sort of links up to this rectangle here. So we would just draw that up there. This goes about there, but again, you just do the measurements. There's one rectangle, this would be the same, you put that up to there, that's going to be, say it's about there. We do a rectangle there, there you go, just two rectangles, but there's the basis of the windows. Now this is an arch. This is a little bit more complicated. Now how do you paint an arch? Well, again, don't look at it as an arch as such. Now we've got the base there, we've got sides there, that's the sides of these windows, and then if you just put really a line going across there, so again you've got more like it's more a little bit longer, wider than a square. That's going to be your arch. And then to draw an arch, then all you need to do is, there's our center line, which is bang in the middle of the arch, which is nice. Then you would just figure out where the line, the actual arch, starts to curve. Say we'll say it's about there in this example. And then all you do with a pencil, so you know you can sketch it and make sure it's right before you ink it in, and then you just put that like that, and then you would sort of join the other bit like that. Just do it to try and make the two sides sort of equal. And what you can do for things like this is, don't really look at this line for the arch, for the middle of this bit. Look at the negative shape. So you're doing a line, but I'm looking at this triangle here. And when you do this line, you're sort of looking at this triangle to make it make it the same as this. If that triangle and that triangle are identical, then it means you've got your line, your arch, correct. That's how I do it anyway. I think that's the easiest way to do it. So then you would have 2 windows and an arched window. Simple as that. And then if we go up to this part, now once again we've got, what have we got? We've got this nice arched type facade window. But again, it's just put a line there, a line there. Forget about this part. We're just going to go up to here because we can put that bit in later. But again, if you look at this window is just a rectangle. So all we would need to do is find out where this side and where this side starts on this line, which we could see if we just look down, put a little mark there, put a little mark there. It's just a little bit inwards on these window frames here. So if we do that, maybe a little line. So just a line up there, a line up there, bum, bum, bum. There we go. It's just a rectangle, but we've got our window in. And we do the same for these. Now again, these 2 windows, it's an arch just like this. So all we would do is if we just put a line, because they're equal, the same size, the same height. So if you just put a line going across there, a line going across there. Forget this bit and just join that onto this there. What have we got? Again, we have a rectangle. So if, for example, if we just put that there, that's around there, we just put a line there, join them up, and there we'll have our windows. Now we've got a gap from there to there. So again, just work out, just do a little measurement. Or because we're looking at now a much smaller shape, we can, okay, well, let's see, that's about there. That's about there. You can eyeball it at this stage. And then we just put a line there. So that's now, we've now separated that into 2 little squares. And you do the same sort of thing. We could just, because there's an arch, you could just measure that and just put like a little line down, and then do the same thing exactly as we did with this big window, just to try and make the arched windows look the same. And so what we have is a complicated looking building there, but when you look at it as shapes, break it all down and do exactly what I've done there, you will find out that you've now got all of the big shapes in scale, in proportion, and then once you're happy, then you can start to go in with smaller details. For example, on these windows here, we can see we've got windows like that. So then you can just start and draw in things like that, which is really easy to do. This window here at the bottom, we have, this goes in there because this window sort of juts in on an angle. No problem. We put a line there. There we go. So we have that jutting in at an angle. So we now got those windows in. The things for this, where it juts out, like I said, don't worry about this at the moment. Now you can just put a mark there. Now we can just do that. We could now fill this area in and just do something like that. Just do the same sort of angle, the same line angle as the top, as is of the bottom there. That sort of just goes in slightly like so. But these are the little details you can put in only once you've got all the big shapes in. And you just continue like that, filling in the details. For example, like that, until you get, basically, it's all done. You get all these little details. Like we have this there. We've got these bits here. Again, the little squares, really, but in all this is a long rectangle, a vertical rectangle. And in that vertical rectangle, then you've got a square, more like a little rectangle, a square, a rectangle, a square, a rectangle, and that's all you would do. Something like that. And you would fill it in just like this, and before you know it, with a little bit of due care, you will find that you've got a complicated looking building quite accurately rendered on your paper, all ready for painting. Right, I've drawn it out. As you can see, it's all completed, and I've drawn this exactly in the same way as I've just described. Now, colour wise, it looks like it's going to be a very limited colour palette, a bit like last week. We have light red or burnt sienna for the brickwork, and we have this light coloured stonework, which looks very sort of Naples yellowish, perhaps a little bit dull Naples yellow. What I could do there is stick in a little bit of, perhaps a bit of brown, or even a little bit of neutral tint, just to dirty it up in places. Apart from that, I think that might be it really. We could put a bit of blue in the windows afterwards. Maybe it's a little bit of ultramarine blue into some of the light red or the burnt sienna to darken up some of the brickwork, just so we've got a difference in colour, so it's not going to be a flat colour. But that's really about it. Maybe 3, perhaps 4 colours in this palette. To start this off, I've decided I'm going to use light red, because if you look, this is much more of a lighter colour brickwork. Burnt sienna, I think, is just going to be too orangey. Light red would be perfect for this, I think. Now I've also put so in this little receptacle, this is yellow ochre and some light red, just to make it a little bit more sort of brighter. And then I think we'll have some light red once again, and we'll put in a little bit of French ultramarine, and this is going to make quite a dark sort of burnt brick type of colour. So we have 3 colours: light red on its own, yellow ochre and light red and French ultramarine. And what we can do here is just simply paint in just flat washes. There's no masking fluid on this, so we have to be a little bit careful around these parts. So I'll just do a little bit here, and before I give it a chance to dry, this is just a sheet of Bockingford paper, and the water I'm using has got 5 drops of ox gall, just to make it flow a little better on this paper, as it's not rag paper, so it behaves differently. So I'll just do this, and then I'm going to go into the yellow ochre burnt sienna mix, and I'll just drop it in. You can see it gives a bit of a more of a warmer glow, if I can get that out. Just drop it around, let it do what it wants, and then I will drop a little bit of the darker into that, but this is way too wet. You probably be able to see it's absolutely flowing. It's the board, the desk is on a slight angle, just a very slight angle, so you can see it's sort of pooling up at the bottom. That's how wet it is, so I can't do anything until that's actually a little bit drier. So I'll just continue down here. We've got this part and that part and some brickwork there. So I'll do this and then I'll come back. Right, so I've painted it all in. So it's pretty flat at the moment, but as ever what I do is to just will take some of the wetness off of the paper, and we're going to give it a little bit of texture. So what I always do, I've shown this before, we get some kitchen roll, toilet paper, whatever, rip it so it's got a fluffy end, and then simply get it to the right size because it's only small, and just where it's blobby I'll just tap it, it just takes a bit off, and it's gone wet. So if it's wet, it flattens out and you get this unnatural hard edge. So we need to rip that to make it fluffy once more. And we'll just rip it and take it, dab it, just to get some of this extra off, and it makes it sure it dries a lot quicker. So we can see it's a lot more patchy now. I'll just do the same thing on the bottom of this. And then into this darker, and we'll just see, have a look at the picture, and we can see here we've got darker bits, looks like darker bits of brickwork up here. Maybe it's just here and there, not too much actually. So we'll just, with a small-ish, but it's a pointy brush. Now this now should have dried sufficiently enough because we've dabbed it. So when I put a little bit of this on, it's not going to go and just spread out everywhere, which you can see it doesn't. So I'll just drop that in there, drop that a little bit down there under the eaves, where I suppose it would naturally get a little bit darker. Now I don't want these harder edges, so I'm going to dip the brush in the clean water and then just drop it on like I've done before. This one firstly it'll dilute the paint, and secondly, as you can see, it'll just make a few little cauliflowers here and there and give us a little bit of extra texture in this old brickwork. But we can see it instantly gives some nice sort of shading and definition under those eaves. I'll put a little bit under here, maybe it's a touch in the recesses there. And we'll just let that dry. We can work on it a little bit more when it's all dry. But the next thing we do is of course to mix up this stonework, I suppose it is. So as I said, it was looked like maybe it's Naples yellow. So we'll have a little bit of Naples yellow here. Now you see Naples yellow is I think it's a little bit too bright, so I'm going to stick a little bit of, a bit too much. This is just, that's not bad. This is just raw sienna. See, it's just darkened it down a little bit. I won't go into this bit because that's still wet, but I can go into all of this. Now the figures are still made out, it's the same colour, so I can just go over the figures. So I'm just do all of this. There's all of this bit here. It's just an underwash, so I'll do it and I'll come back. Okay, so all this bottom part's done, filled in with this colour. This is still a bit wet, so I can't do that. But now to lighten this up, to make it look a little bit more like this picture is I'll just take that and I'll just dab it, and that's going to take some of the excess off, make it a bit patchy so it's textured, and it's going to just lighten it up magically by the exact amount. For some reason it always does. And that will make it look very nice. And that's the whole of the two colours at least completed. These are of course underwashes. We shall put some nice watery mixes on afterwards to give it that nice textured look and a nice more watercolour type look. But while this is drying, what we'll do now is we've got all these little bits and bobs in the actual shop itself, so using just a variety of different colours, I'll just paint in all these little boxes and tins or whatever they are. But we're all dry, and now we can start to put a little bit of texturing into the brickwork. Now I don't really think it's going to be too much because it's only a small area. It's sort of in the midish distance. The bricks will be very small, so it's going to be just an impression of bricks. So I'm just going to use here the colours I've already used. Maybe it's a touch stronger. So there's some light red. And as ever, all I'm going to do is I'm going to drop with a small nylon brush, just drop some in, go over into this yellow ochre light red mix. I'll just drop some in there. In the water, drop it on, and then just pull it around. Now I'm just splashing this all over. I'm really not looking to really where I'm doing, but we can see there's a negative brick. There are some negative bricks. And it all happens just by accident. And I'll just drop this in here and there, back into the light red on its own. In the water, drop it on. Ooh, that's a lot, but doesn't matter, it's all good. Just means we'll hopefully get some more texturing at no extra price. Now we'll just drop that into there. Go around here. Nice and blobby. A little bit down here. Cut around the edges there into that mixture. And that's enough. Then in the water, drop it on. Just drop that around there so it flows in with this and hopefully creates a few little textures on its own, as in the form of some watermarks. And just tickle this around with the tip of the brush. We need to go back in now a little bit just around the corner there, a little bit just around that corner. Drop the water on, pull it around, and we have that. And then, because it is rather blobby here and there, and we just get our rag and simply just dab, just get some of this water off, and also once again we'll just make a few extra little pieces of texture, and we can see exactly what that's done compared to this, and I should just do exactly the same with all the other brickwork. Right, I've done all of the brickwork. Just dropping in the extra washes, as you've seen. Now it's still rather wet, especially in these areas, but what I need to do now is we've put the light underwash on. Then we've put the secondary wash on, pulled it around with some water as you saw me do, and it's made this lovely sort of textured, looks like brickwork, but it's still a little bit too neat looking. So now we have to stick some of the original wash, this dark wash, which was light red and ultramarine, and we've got to drop some of that in there and here and there. Now it might be a little bit too damp, but we will see. So I still want some just put under the eaves here, and a touch of just a touch of water. Now that's going to make it spread out, and also if it just leaves one or two tiny little light areas, cauliflowers types, then that wouldn't be a bad thing actually. We'll have a little bit of this under there. So this is going to be light against dark. A little bit of that there. Now it's drying there, so a touch of water, drop it on, and just tap it so it pulls it out a little bit. See that? We've got a nice some negative bricks there. Perhaps a little bit just around here. I'm not looking at the photograph. I'm just doing it where I think I might need it. And let's mirror this up. We can also put a little bit of this on when it's completely dry, when it's a bit more controllable. But for now, and there we can see the brickwork virtually done. Now we let that dry, and now we'll continue. We'll do the same thing with all this yellow ochre type of stonework. So it's all dry now, and so the next thing we need to do is to put some texturizing and some tonal differences on the light stonework. As we can sort of see, it has got little bits in here and there. It is a bit dirty. It is an old building. So again, I'm not going to look at this. I'm just going to put this where I think it needs to be. And I've got the colour here. And what this is, it's simply Naples yellow, the colour of this, mixed with a little bit of neutral tint. And you can see that's just dirtied it down lovely. And then all I need to do here is to simply, the small brush, it's the same brush I used for the brickwork, just drop some on here and there, like so. Brush in the water, and then just drop some water on and then pull it around. And then the usual, get a little bit of rag, rip it so it's a bit fluffy, and just here and there, very gently, where you want, just dab it out, parts of it out, and you will get this sort of stained looking brickwork, stonework. So I'll do a little bit here, just pull it down. It's got to be blobby, remember. That's enough. In the water, drop the water on, and then just dab it around, pull it around. So some parts are more stronger, some parts become diluted. And then a little bit, and just very, very gingerly, just dab it around a little bit, and you'll start to get this slightly weathered, slightly darker in parts, patchy, slightly textured sort of appearance. It's exactly what I did here. It's just a different colour, and I'll do that all over this brickwork, or stonework in this case. And when that's done, we'll have to darken this up a little bit more, and then just go over in places to give a little bit more weathered look to the building, to make it look old. Now we're back, and I've put a little wash as you've just seen me do, over all of this light stonework. So it is now a little bit more textured. It's a bit patchy here. It's lighter there, darker there, lighter there. We can see. So now next off to do with this is I've made this. This is the same colour, Naples yellow and neutral tint, but I've now darkened it up considerably using more neutral tint, and then I'll do exactly the same thing, just here and there. For example, we'll do a little bit just underneath there. We'll go around these stone statues, because I think I'd rather have those a little bit lighter. In with the water, drop it on, and then just pull it around a tad. A bit more water, drop it on. Just pull it around, so we're making even more texture and a little bit more. It's a bit more patchy, a little bit more old looking. We'll just put a little bit around here. So that's nice, because this now, it's framing this nice light statue. If we put a little bit here around there, you can see it's now light against dark, and it makes it stand out lovely. And again, I will continue all over where I think it needs on this stonework. Right, I've finished all of the lighter coloured stonework, and as you should be able to see now, that it's a lot more textured, it's a lot more dirty looking. It's got patches here, patches there, patches everywhere. So it looks a lot more of the building itself. Now what I'm going to do is, we still have quite a lot of light areas in, so I'm going to paint in the windows. Now the windows are just going to be a mix of French ultramarine blue and neutral tint to make a nice dark colour. It's heavily on the blue still. I might have to put a little bit more neutral tint in, but we'll see. So all I'm going to do is, with a small brush, paint in the window here. I'm not painting everything. It might be a little bit too blue, that we'll see. Going to paint like that, and then once again, drop of water, bump like that, drop of water like that, drop of water, drop of water, and then just pull it around. And if we leave any little flecks of white paper, then leave them, because that could be chinks of light reflecting off the window pane, the window pane, like so. And I'm just going to do this with every window. I'll just do this one, so leave some of the gap. See these little flecks? I'm not leaving them there intentionally. It just happens. Like that. In the water. Drop it on. You can see it dropping on. And we can see here that we're now getting some really nice cauliflowers, which is going to make it look very organic. If you want to help that organicness, just put another little drop like so, where you think you want. And we should just let that dry off naturally. And I shall do this with all of the windows. Right, that's the windows in. You see it does look like we've got some blue sky. I think we will put a bit of blue sky at the end. But it looks like there's blue sky coming down and reflecting off the window panes. So they're not just a flat black, they're a nice colourful a colourful dark. Now the next thing I want to do is just put some tone onto these two statues, and what I'm going to use there is simply some raw sienna, and just to define it a little bit from the background colour. And I'm just going to put some on that statue like that. Bit of water, again pull it around so it's more like a stain. Get some underneath that bit of fabric there. This is where the creases are. You get a little bit under that arm. And then a little bit of water. Just pull that around a touch. We can put a little bit of shading on afterwards when we put shadows, but something like that, I think. So now I've put a few more bits of raw sienna coloured texture around just under where the shadow bits are going to go. I've now got to put a little bit more dark into this brickwork, and this what I'm going to use here is just the original colour I used, the light red ultramarine, but I'm going to put some of this window colour in. It just darkens it up ever so slightly, and I'm just going to again just put some paint along the bottom here, in the water, drop it on, and then just pull it out. So it's going to look more like just a stain. I'm just softening off the edges, so we don't want hard edges here. We put a little bit just here, especially where it's light against the dark. In the water, drop it on, and just tip of the brush, just pull it out, making sure that those edges are soft. We'll have a little bit, maybe it's a little bit down here, pull it around this light a bit, make sure it's always blobby. We need a blobby. Maybe it's a bit there, drop that water on and pull it around. Now if it gets a little bit too blobby, just like it is there, because it is a very small area, then just ever so slightly dab with your tissue to get it back. We'll have a little bit down here, around there again, light against dark, looking at the tones. We put a bit down here, maybe it's a bit under there, touch there, that's enough. And then water on and pull it around. See, there's a couple of negative bricks there, that's nice. Just dab some of the excess water off. So we can see we've got this really nice, now it looks like old brick. We've got the light tones, we've got the mid tones, and we've got putting some darker tones on. And that's what I'm going to do, or maybe a little bit more around here, and we'll do this down here. Now we've done a lot of work to this. We've got brickwork that looks like brickwork, but we haven't painted any bricks. We've got this nicely textured and nicely coloured stone. It looks old, but now what we need to do is it's very flat, I need to put shadows in, and this is a shadow colour I'm going to use. Now this is French ultramarine, neutral tint, and a little bit of yellow ochre to tone it down a little bit, but it just gives a very nice sort of shadow colour. And what I need to do now is decide where to put the shadows, and I'm going to have, I think, the sun again coming from this general direction, maybe 1 o'clock coming down, so things on the right hand side are going to be in shadow, and they'll cast a little bit of a shadow onto the wall. So I think I'll be speeding this up so you can watch me paint the shadows, but in a sped up version. Now the shadows are in, but we need to put a wash of cobalt blue over these windows to make it look like there's a window pane in it. So this is just going to be just weak cobalt blue, and then just paint it over everything. And that will make it look like there's an actual window in the front reflecting the sunshine, and it pushes everything else in the distance behind the glass. I think the final thing we need to do is we've got these actual blocks here. Now these are only drawn in pencil, but they are definitely more prominent in the photograph, as there's like gaps between each one. So I've mixed up, this is just pure raw sienna, just an inexpensive #1 Daylon nylon rigger. And what I'm going to do here is just to fill these in with the rigger, so we've got the gaps in between, but I'm not doing them so dark that it's going to stand out, because we've got all the other darks here and there. So this is all I'm going to do, which will make them stand out just enough, but not stand out to be in your face too much. And that's the shadows put in. So all I need to really do now is on these windows here, they do have some looks like leading, so I'm going to do it in a white pen, because this should be dark enough for it to stand out nice. Now I've just done a few little minor things. I've just darkened the windows up a tad, just tidied up some of the white window frames with a little bit of white ink, and that's about it really. But that's the picture complete, all painted and drawn from a few little blocks. Again, that's what it started with, just a rectangle with a triangle on the top, divided into basically 3 or 4 other rectangles, and then within those rectangles you put the other bits and bobs in: windows, rectangles, windows, squares. That's how I started, that's how I drew this, and then you put all the little details in, and that's what it ends up like when it's painted. And I like it. It's a very nice, it's a relatively loose style, a very illustrative style, which I quite like. And I hope you like it, and I hope I've given you the impetus to actually try something like this and just knock it down into its basic component blocks, a bit like building Lego. And then when you have those blocks in, then go smaller and finer, smaller and finer, until you get it all drawn in, and then just basic washes. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me next week for another picture. So until then, goodbye.